Pastor Dwayne Morris is here from Calvary Baptist Church. If you would like to join us in prayer, please stand.
Just want to say on behalf of Calvary, thank you so much for your service. And then most of you know I'm also a county supervisor for Jefferson County. And I want to say as well, we're so grateful for the cooperation and the collaboration that we have in the city of Watertown. Let's bow for prayer. Father, thank you so much for the privilege that we have to conduct this important business. And we know that the citizens have invested and entrusted to these people this important work. And so I pray that as they conduct their business tonight, that you will give them all grace and dignity and wisdom, and let them be able to find common ground where they can, and encourage them, Lord. Thank you for our city government, and we pray for, from the top down, everyone involved, that you would strengthen them. Thank you so much for police and fire, other department heads, and as they function, Lord, we pray that they too would have wisdom and grace. And thank you again for your goodness toward us. We pray this in Jesus' precious name.
Thank you, Pastor. All right. Being that it's 7:01, I'm going to call our Tuesday, July 18th council meeting to order. Megan, will you take the roll, please?
Davis. Here. Lampy.
Here.
Ford.
Here.
Bartz.
Here.
Blanky. Smith.
Here.
Schmidt.
Here.
Wetzel.
Here.
Moldenhauer.
Here.
And please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just because we did have a few people walk in after, I just want to make mention that if anyone does want to comment that there are some papers out in the hallway, you can fill those out and hand them to our clerk here in the front. The next item on our agenda is the minutes of the council meeting from July 5th. Comments or questions from anybody on those minutes? All right, then let's go to our next item, which is comments and suggestions from citizens present. So in a moment, Megan will call a name. If you would just please come to the microphone by Alderperson Davis and state your name and address. Megan.
Ken Berg.
Good evening, Mayor McFarland and council members and city officials. I appreciate.
Mr. Berg, can I interrupt you? Is that microphone on? Ms. Davis, can you see if it's red?
Yes, that's right. Screen
There we go. Now we should be
Okay.
good. Yep, thank
My
you.
voice usually carries, but
It sure does, but it
yeah.
wasn't this time, so.
Yeah, thank you. Anyways, I'm here to speak against the resolution that you're going to be dealing with tonight on financing for a $13 million type of borrowing for a new fire station. And I started my day at McDonald's today, and when I was there, I got approached by different people, and actually comments came because Joe Callis did a nice job and wrote an article in the Voice of the People on Monday and told a story about a satellite concept and why it made sense. And he asked in that letter about why a referendum wasn't done. So I think those comments resonated with me, and they helped trigger my reason for being here. But actually, when you look at the $13 million by itself, that should be justification for a referendum. I was on the council when we borrowed $4.5 million for fixing up, renovating, making it bigger our city hall, and we did that with a referendum. So it made sense back then, 2003. I know times has changed, but still, it made sense at that time. The debt you're going to take on is for 20 years. And again, I know the way it's been done, and Baird's very good at what they do, and I'm not here critical of them at all, but the first 3 years are going to be lesser amounts of debt service, and after that 17 years is going to be $1,088,000 or whatever number. So it's going to be like that for 20 years. That's going to impact on future borrowing, and it's just by definition, because the new baseline now has been raised by that borrowing, and it'll be there now for 20 years to be dealing with. You did have a borrowing that's going to expire in 3 years, and instead of giving property tax relief, you're going to actually replace it with new debt, which is the way you're doing it, which makes sense, but that's just to be aware of that approach. What I'm getting a lot of comment on is that the location is flawed, and I'm going to make the case for why it makes some sense for a satellite approach. But as it is right now, with it being a primary station for the entire city, there was a lady, I actually never met her, but her name was Debbie Richter, and she wrote an article a month and a half ago or so, and she was talking about why that location was bad. She was telling that the traffic count is bad, and it's because of Bernard Street and South Church. The congestion's a bottleneck, and she was encouraging people not to go there for that reason. She also pointed out that it's going to be aggravated by the development of the YMCA going in when it does, based on going in there, and you've got your daycare going in at some point in time. It's going to also bring people to that side of town. There's 83 acres left, and you're going to develop that potentially into a large residential type of project. It's going to have lots of people, a lot of housing that's going to go there, and again, aggravate, because a portion of those people are going to come back onto Bernard, and they're going to want to go north or south, and that's going to, again, aggravate and make that location worse for a primary station, which is why I'm making the point that using a smaller portion, maybe 3 acres or so, for a satellite concept is actually more appealing to me, because then you're going to serve the southwest, southeast part of town and do it in a way that's not going to aggravate that site and that location as much as it would be for being the only site in town to serve all areas. And I am pointing out that the other point is that you got 94% for this proposed new location. That hasn't been tested yet. I know the 90% on our existing location has been tested over time, but I don't have confidence in that 94% because it's not there, and it's all theoretical right now for me. So I'm telling you, the satellite concept, for me, is the way to go, and it's been our approach consistently with Watertown. And Joe's article that he wrote pointed out that places like Pleasant Prairie, De Pere, Middleton, Stevens Point, Sun Prairie, I looked into. All of them have 2 stations. They're all comparable in size to Watertown. That concept makes sense, and it always did for Watertown. For some reason, you went against it on what you're trying to do here. So I'm pointing out that what's appealing is that you can actually serve the entire city and get 100% response time with having 2 sites. You'll take care of the rural developments and the rural townships by giving them better fire protection and better EMS if you have to go out there for an EMS type run. All those are reasons why you should look at the approach of a satellite concept. And you can do it yet, modify what you're doing. But Governor Evers, I was just aware that he and the legislature came up with new funding. They're going to give Watertown over $700,000 of new money every year, recurring type money. You can use it for things. You can earmark a portion of those dollars and use it for staffing for that satellite concept, because I know our chief in his letter he gave to other people, including me, it pointed out that the staffing was one of the reasons for not going with the satellite. You can offset that by these dollars that you're getting from Evers, and you can make that a non-issue, and you can fix the problem for all of Watertown for the future in a good way. At the same time, you can put money into the existing station and make it a better station. Now you'll have 2 sites improved, and you'll do it for less money, and you'll satisfy our needs foreseeable future, and I think it's clearly the better option. If you're a critical thinker, if you're a conservative, fiscal conservative, I'm asking you to say no to this tonight. Give it more time, look into it further. I'm not telling you to kill it, but because I want to fix our problem. I'm not here to say no to everything. I want a better approach. I'm suggesting why the concept of a satellite is better. Thank you for listening to my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Berg. Again?
I'm always hurried by getting this done, but I appreciate listening.
Joe Callis.
Good evening. Yeah, my name is Joe Callis. I live at 1217 Douglas. Mayor McFarland, members of the council. Tonight you will be voting on Resolution 9523, authorizing the sale of 13,080,000 note anticipation notes for a 37,000 square foot fire station with Baird Incorporated handling the sale. The notes will be sold at a later date. Most people believe that the new fire station is a done deal, but from this resolution, clearly it is not. This means there is still time for this council to take an honest look at the difference between having one huge fire station or 2 smaller ones, which would give the city better coverage. There is a reason why cities roughly the same population as Watertown have 2 or more fire stations. It's the better response times. It makes total sense to build a new 20,000 square foot fire station to give the department the much needed additional space. The current 17,000 square feet station could and should be improved. This was never debated or looked into because I believe the council was dead set against keeping the current station. They want to give it to the police department for a parking garage. I toured the fire station and all the deficiencies were pointed out to me. The main issue appeared to be overcrowding of the firefighters. This can be resolved with the building of a second station and some remodeling of the existing station. It wouldn't take a whole lot of creative thinking to make emergency services work with 2 fire stations and work well. The best action you can take right now is to table that resolution and revisit the best way to provide emergency services for Watertown. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Megan.
Bill Moran.
Hi, I'm Bill Marone, 701 Crestview Drive. For those who don't know me, I was the 8th District Alderman in the past, and I also am a former president of this Common Council. Thank you for listening to me tonight. The purpose of me speaking to you tonight is to urge you to vote no on Resolution Exhibit 9523 regarding the sale of approximately $13,080,000 to construct and equip a new fire station. While I'm sure we would all agree that we need to upgrade our fire service facilities, I strongly believe the current plan is not the answer. Reasons for this are numerous. For starters, the option of a satellite fire station has not been properly vetted, if considered at all. The option needs to be seriously considered due to the likely large reduction in cost to the taxpayers. Second is location. I don't know if I could think of a worse place in the city to build this facility. The traffic is usually very busy in this area due to Bernard Street, Church Street, and then we also have congestion for Pick and Save, Ace Hardware, Bank of Lake Mills, and other shops in the area. The large volume from the developments on the southwest part of the city are predominantly funneled through into town either by Milford Street to Montgomery or Bernard Street. Most of that traffic is going down Bernard Street, especially at the high traffic times. I don't know how an ambulance will even be able to get through there. I should be very happy because the new facility will only be 4/10 of a mile to my house. With a location this far out on the southwest edge of town, it will restrict the timeliness of fire services on the north part of town, which is, and I'm sure will, continue to grow. If you pay attention to the bulk of the EMS calls that are to the 2 nursing homes on the northern part of the city, the EMS would have to go all the way across town now on each and every one of those calls if we put it out on Milford or on Bernard. And I still think, too, that the presentation of the costs for this project, I don't think was really clear to a lot of people. I don't know that we're being transparent, that we are basically retiring debt and then just putting this debt right in its place without giving the city residents any idea on, what exactly, is being paid off and what would we get in return if we didn't do this and went with a smaller one. I guess the last thing that I would like to say is that I do think that we should go to a referendum on this. We're spending $13 million, okay? And that $13 million that we borrow is going to have to be paid back. And the only way we can pay it back is by the taxpayers. And I think it's beyond what we should be doing. I would like to see a referendum. I'm very much in favor of, a new facility. We definitely have to address what we have here, but I don't think this is the answer. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else? Before I close public comment, anyone else that would like to comment? We do have another opportunity at the end of the meeting as well. All right, then let's go to reports. You all have the licensing board minutes from June 6th, tourism from June 8th, library board of trustees from June 8th, special licensing board from June 12th, police and fire commission June 12th, finance from June 26th, licensing board from July 5th, public safety and welfare from July 5th, and public works from July 11th. Comments or questions from anybody on any of those minutes? All right, then let's go to communications and recommendations. This evening we have a few employee recognitions, which I always appreciate having the opportunity to acknowledge people who serve the city. We have a few with us this evening. The one that could not join us this evening is Holly Heisel, and she's been with the Health Department for 15 years. So we thank Holly for her service to the Health Department and to the city. And I know we have a few from the Police Department, so I think we'll start with Chief Kaminsky and Officer Raul Nieto, who has been with the city for 5 years. Chief, there's a mic right there for you. You probably have to turn it on, though. I think so. You can come on up. Yep.
Come on up. Yeah, next to your favorite person. It's a joke because we joke around in roll call. I hired 3 officers at about the same time. Raul was one of them, so I always say I got 2 out of 3 right. And he gives me a hard time back and forth, but we just joke. So Raul has been working with us since 2018. He started out as an auxiliary officer for us, and from there on, he stuck with us. Raul worked as a graphic designer prior to getting into law enforcement, but has always had an interest in working for the police department. That background in graphic arts and design has come in handy. He's helped us redesign the Donut Dash logo, other things. So Raul is a go-to for the artsy stuff, our squad cars. He's got an eye for that kind of stuff. Raul was born in Zacatecas, Mexico. Still has mom, at least one sister. Yep. 3 sisters that still live there that he goes back to see. Raul attended school in Mexico, graduating from high school, and attended law school for a little while in Mexico. Raul was in the Mexican Army military and attended the Honor Military College, which would be similar to our West Point. So he has a pretty good background that he comes with us. Raul came to the U.S. in 2000, became a U.S. citizen in 2013. He's lived and worked all around the Watertown area all that time since he's been here mostly. He attended Madison College where he got his degree in graphic design. So Raul is soft-spoken. This is him. He's a lot of, yep, little smiles, grins, things like that. Jokes around a little bit, but super highly driven guy, very active, probably one of the most active guys in the department. So if you see those speeders getting busted, it's probably Raul. Raul came to us and he had a vision that he wanted to connect the police department and the Hispanic community. So in his short time as an officer working for the city, he's attended church in uniform. He's gone to job fairs in uniform. He's reached out to the Hispanic community. He comes to Lights and Sirens. He's big into soccer. He's coached, and he has a connection to the soccer that goes on in the city here and is trying to make connections that way. He attends many other meetings. He is just really trying to build a better relationship with the Hispanic community in the city. And that shows because we have people that come and will talk to the police and file complaints that normally wouldn't do that because they can connect with Raul and some of our other officers now. So Raul is used extensively as a translator and as an officer, and he's translated forms and documents, and his voice was, I think, on our phone at one time for Spanish translation. So I can't say enough about him. He's a great guy, works hard in the community, and he works hard for the city. So thanks, Raul. Yep. Yes.
Before he can go, I just want to add a couple. So when we were in the, really in the depths of COVID, we looked around and, asked each other, like, how can we reach out to the Spanish-speaking population? And Officer Nieto was huge in that he translated things for us. I'm confident while he wasn't on duty. We asked him to be like a film star and like record videos. And I know there's been plenty of times where we've reached out and there was never even any hesitation. So I know his service is far beyond the police department, and I know I appreciate it greatly, and so does our community. So thank you for your service, and thank you for being here. To continue with the police department, I'm going to invite up Assistant Chief Olson, and we will start our couple for this evening from the Police Auxiliary with Mr. Bradley Benton. And I'm going to check this.
All right, tonight I have the honor of presenting auxiliaries Pam Capon and Brad Benton with certificates recognizing them for their many years of service to the Watertown community. Pam has been an auxiliary with our department for 10 years, and Brad has been with us for 5. Auxiliary officers are a tremendous resource for us, and I can't thank them enough for what they do. Auxiliaries help with many things throughout the year. They help secure parks, they help with traffic control and other assignments at Riverfest and other special events. They assist with parades and other public gatherings. They make themselves available to be on call 24/7 in case of a major event where traffic control or other things are needed. The list goes on. Without our auxiliary officers, our sworn personnel would be stretched thin. I am appreciative of the time Pam and Brad have provided over the years. Auxiliary officer assignments don't typically fall during normal work hours. The fact that Pam and Brad have helped for this many years on top of work, family, and other commitments is admirable. Pam and Brad, thank you for your many years of service. Your hard work is noticed and appreciated.
Will you turn that mic off, please? Thank you. I'll just add to the list, in addition to what Assistant Chief Olson shared, they're always so friendly, you know? Like, you're at an event, there's a million people everywhere, and they are just willing to chat and help you get along the way. So thank you for joining us this evening. The only other item we have under communications and recommendations is the fire department's June report. Questions on the report from anybody? Well, all right then.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
could
Mr.
you
Wetzel.
share the screen with us,
I sure can.
please?
Are you fine with me switching it over? Okay, the next item on our agenda is, under new business, is to review and approve some committee appointments. So we have a couple on the library board for you all. Is there a motion on these?
I move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Lampe,
I support.
second by Mr. Bartz. Any discussion on those? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, the next item on our agenda for this evening is the accounts payable.
I would so move.
Motion by Mr. Moldenhauer, second by Mr. Wetzel. Anyone have questions or comments on the accounts? Megan?
Moldenhauer. Davis. Lampy. Board. Bartz.
Aye.
Smith. Schmid.
Aye.
Wetzel.
Aye.
Motion passed 8-0.
Very good. Let's go to miscellaneous business. You have the payroll summary from June 14th to 27th, the cash investment summary ending June 30th. Questions on either of those? All right, then let's go to licenses. The first item under licenses is a memo from the city clerk pertaining to our licensing board meeting. And the first item stemming from that memo is to review and take action on applications for temporary Class B licenses for the Watertown Area Chamber of Commerce 7th Annual Downtown Watertown Wine Walk. It's listed at the downtown locations noted on the agenda, and it is dated September 7th from 4:30 to 8. Questions, comments, motions on this one? Anyone want to make a motion to approve the temporary Class B license? Motion by Mr. Moldenhauer. Is there a second to that? Second by Mr. Smith. Questions?
Mayor, I will abstain since I signed the application.
Thank you. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? And abstain. Mr. Boyd.
Abstain. Thank you.
Very good. All right, our next is to review and take action on a temporary premise amendment application by Kara Pugh for local waters. This is on September 23rd during the hours of 12 p.m. to 11 p.m. Is there a motion on this one? Mr. DeBart. Motion by Mr. Bartz, second by Mr. Lampe. Questions on this one?
I have some questions.
Yes, Ms. Davis.
So this one's a little bit unusual. If you look at the memo, we're being asked to approve a conditional approval, which from my understanding means that as a council, we vote to approve pending that the items specified in the memo are submitted to the city clerk and then approved by the city clerk. And those items, there's about 5 of them, from documented approval of neighboring businesses and building owners that don't object to the event. Is that 100% of the neighbors, or is there a percentage that would be required, or?
We didn't say a percent, so I presume it's all of them. Yeah.
If, I was actually going to offer an amendment to this one essentially to help clarify the neighbor piece. If you consider where this is basically the south 100 block of 3rd Street. And what you have there is you have essentially some neighbors that front the street and some that do not. And so I was thinking in terms of a clarification, one of the things I think that's assumed by the way that we got this from the licensing board is that permission had been solicited, and therefore a chance to object or not object was there. And so I guess I was going to propose that we could do 2 things, is first of all, ask for a positive confirmation. In other words, the license holder would go out and actually ask people. But then also I'd want to restrict that essentially to the businesses that are fronting the 100 block of South. So basically those folks that are affected in this map here, where you see, the Treats, Drafty Cellar, and then there are a few more businesses located to the south of local waters here.
The way that it was discussed was the businesses that would be affected by the closure. Do you want to speak to that, Mr. Cheeseborough?
Correct. It would be the businesses that were affected by the closure. The local waters did represent at the licensing committee meeting that they have already received permission from those individuals, and they indicate that they don't think this will be a burden at all to obtain the approval from them.
But there are a couple of other things in the list, and I think the one that I'm interested in getting resolved is that the map will need to show that the entrance to the event is through the local waters premise. As I look at the map that was submitted as part of our packet, it looks like that there are 2 entrances, one off of Main and one off of Market. It's my understanding that, though, that the entrance has to go through local waters, which obviously is very awkward because of its location there. So at this point, the map that was submitted doesn't meet the ordinance. And so I think as a council, we would want to see all the evidence presented before we give approval as a council, so that we can be accountable for this. I'm all in favor of having events like this if everyone's on board, if they follow the code, if they fall under the ordinance. But ultimately, the ordinance is written in such a way that they come to us for approval, and we just don't have all the pieces put together quite yet. I think they're going to get there. I think it'll all come together, and when they do, then it'll be ready for approval.
I'm going to go to Mr. Cheeseborough. Ms. Pugh, I see you. I'll come to you if I need you. I trust me, I saw the movement. We will come to you if we need you, but the city attorney, I think, can answer this part.
We did discuss the map with local waters at the licensing meeting. They did agree that the northern ID check entrance exit would be closed off completely. The southern one would become a exit that was guarded. And then the entrance would be through the back entrance of local waters. And so that would be the only entrance. The entrance to the outside area would only be through their 2 front doors. And they talked about possibly setting up a 1 door's entrance and 1 door's exit from their internal premise to the outdoor premise.
The entrance, so I want to clarify, and Chief, you can hop in here too at any point if you'd like to. The entrance is through the back of local waters. So through the parking, through their back area, they would come in. And please jump in as well. What was articulated to us at licensing board? Come in through the back of local waters. That's the only way to come in, to be ID checked, wristbanded, et cetera. And then the chief did ask to have an exit out in the street for safety, so that we maintained that exit in the lower right corner, that purple box. But I want to I want to clarify, when we were at licensing board, we made a motion based on the materials provided contingent upon these things happening. I don't recall us asking for an updated map. So we just said the entrance must be. So can you clarify for the council what they would be considering? They're considering a conditional approval based on the affronting business owners not objecting, the approval of the special event road closure, entrance only through the local waters premise, and then us providing an exemption, which the licensing board is recommending, providing exemption to the maximum outside area being larger than the inside area. Is that a factual representation of what we discussed at licensing board?
The other requirement would be the northern entrance being closed off,
Yes.
and then the southern entrance being an exit only with somebody monitoring that to ensure it's just for exit.
I just wanted to clarify, we didn't request any updated information.
Can I ask a
Yes,
follow-up
please.
question as I look at the map? Is the fencing along Sweet Talking Treats and the Drafty Cellar, is that on the sidewalk? Is that on the street? So I guess what I want to know is there's still pedestrian access on the sidewalk to people who are not at the event?
The way that it was drafted, no. The block would be completely closed off. The right-of-way would be used for the special event premise. And they did provide access to any residents in the area, and that's on the map that's on the screen now. These were additional pathways that they came up with for residents in the premise. And then as far as the businesses, my understanding was the Sweet Talking Treats wasn't affected, either due to being closed or agreeing to the situation. The Drafty Cellar will be closed during the special event. So our understanding is that they have no objection. Again, we've requested that in writing to clarify, but it would block off anybody from accessing it from any other building, and that's why the fences were set up to be along the buildings themselves.
So this is all really helpful information. I think since you have spoken it, then it's in the record. And so it's a conditional approval based on the things that have been presented tonight and are in the official record then.
Did you
I'll just add, it was everything we discussed has been spelled out. And we did talk about the entrances, we talked about the safety of the event, we talked about the fencing, because it still has to go through approval for a special event, because we have to close the road.
Right.
So, I mean, I would have my security concerns, I'm sure the fire department will have their concerns for fire safety. So those are all things that we'll look at one more time when the special event permit comes through.
And I don't want to get too far off topic, but does this fall under the prorated 0% the first year, 20% the second year special event for special services?
Because it's a special event.
Right, okay.
Second year.
Okay. Well, the information you provided has helped me because, as I said, now that you've said it, because we didn't have it in the packets, so, but now that you've said it, it's in the record, and so.
Mr. Lampe?
I do share some of the concerns with regard to the written record. I'm certainly interested in having, like, everything that we said here, like, written down and clarified, because I would like to be able to do this again next year with less work. But the one other thing that I wanted to kind of get clarification on was that 100 block of South 3rd Street. When we're talking about neighboring applications, I'm a little bit or neighboring businesses, because this is something that extends out to the corner. I want to be careful that we're not talking like a wraparound business. We're talking about exclusively businesses that are essentially facing the 3rd Street.
It was our intention that it was businesses that would be affected, like they would not be able to enter their buildings.
Okay.
So
That would be
businesses.
3rd Street.
Ms. Pugh has to get the permission of people who will be unable to enter their business from their primary entrance because of this closure.
Great, thank you.
I'm just looking around to everyone who is at licensing board with me to make sure I'm representing that accurately. Good questions. Any others? Yes, Mr. Schmidt.
So I have a question. There's a stage indicated on the map. I'm assuming there's live music associated with this? And the permit goes from 12 p.m., so noon till 11 p.m., which is roughly 11 hours. What's the volume and intent of the stage because that being in the heart of my district, that is the biggest issue I have is noise complaints from venues with music. So just to spirit that off ahead of time, what's the intended in time for the band and what volume do they plan on being at with it reverbing through a residential area?
Sure. I honestly don't, I know it's not that extended period of time. Does anyone, Miss Chief? Go ahead.
4 continuous hours of music is what's allowed by ordinance.
And not all of it will be amplified. If I could speak, like, this is our second annual.
No?
This is.
Or yes? Are you knowing her? We're good. Do you have anything to add? I can say from licensing board, we spoke about music, and it's not the extended period of time. The event isn't ending at 11 PM either. They're moving that, they left themselves time to clean up. So the music can only be for 4 continuous hours in a 24-hour period, according to the code.
I only ask because I want to make sure that I head up any questions regarding to noise ordinance or volume, because there's residential places above those businesses, and it's going to reverb into the residential neighborhoods down the street, and I have a distinct feeling I may or may not get calls on noise ordinances from that area because I seem to for every event. I just want to make sure that it's not more than 4 hours, so they know that it's a very brief period of time through the course of the event, and it sounds like a good event, so.
Thank you. Any others? Okay. So we have a motion, correct? That happened?
I thought we had an amendment from Alderman Lampy.
No.
It was still the original motion.
Okay.
So we're just at the original motion, which was made by Mr. Bartz and seconded by Mr. Lampy, if I'm correct. Does everyone understand what we're voting on, or should I summarize it quick?
Please do.
Okay, so right now we have a motion to approve a temporary premise amendment for September 23rd between the hours of 12 PM and 11 PM for Local Waters Blacktoberfest, with the conditions that Ms. Pugh needs to receive the documented approval of neighboring businesses and building owners that they do not, those that would be affected by not being able to enter the primary entrance of their building because of the event, that they do not object to the event. She needs to have the approval of the special event license because of the road closure. The entrance into the event would only be through the Local Waters premise, and then there would be an exit at the southeast corner. Is that the only? And then that the city is providing an exemption to the maximum outside area, that is larger than the inside area, and that the outside exit is monitored. Good? Any other comments or questions? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Very good. Okay, let's go to our next. This is to review and take action on an application for a temporary Class B license for the Marine Corps League. This is for their annual picnic on August 27th from 12 to 8 p.m. Mr. Smith.
I'd move for the approval of the temporary Class B license for the Marine Corps annual picnic.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Moldenhauer. Anybody on this one? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, our next is also a review and take action for an application for a temporary Class B license for the Sounds of Summer concert series. This is by the Watertown Rotary for an event held at the Square on July 29th from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Is there a motion on this one? Motion by Mr. Board, second by Mr. Bartz. Questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, the next is also an application for a temporary Class B license, also for the Sounds of Summer concert series at the Square. This is through the Watertown Main Street program for July 20th from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m.
Move for the approval of this temporary Class B license.
Thank you. Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Moldenhauer. Anybody on this one? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Our next is an action item for another temporary Class B and temporary Class B license for Fiesta in the Park for Fiesta Cultural Latino Americana on September 16th. This is also at the Square from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. So, Mr. Lampy?
I would so move.
Motion by Lampy, second by Bartz. Anybody on this one? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, and our last is an application for a Class B malt and liquor for Gas House, doing business as Gas House. Tiffany Rhodes is the agent, and that is at 1500 Bridge Street here in Watertown. Is there a motion for this one? Motion by Mr. Moldenhauer, seconded by Mr. Bartz. Any questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, let's go to ordinances. Our first is ordinance 23-18. This is an ordinance to amend section 410-52, paren 1, possession of alcohol beverages on public ways of the City of Watertown General Code. This is here from Ms. Davis in Public Safety and Welfare on its first reading. Ms. Davis?
I'll make a motion to approve this ordinance to amend section 410-52C1.
Motion by Ms. Davis, seconded by Mr. Lampy. Comments or questions on this one? Mr. Lampy?
Can we have a quick summary of what the change is and why
Sure.
we're putting that in?
The change came about because the current ordinance prohibits alcohol, open intoxicant beverages in the town square, essentially. The ordinance prohibits any open intoxicants between Katy Street and Milwaukee Street Bridge, along the Rock River on both shores, on any contiguous public property, as well as the Riverwalk. The ordinance prohibits the city from allowing an event that would host alcohol there unless they obtain a Class B picnic license. The proposed revision would expand that so that any license to dispense or sell alcohol issued under Wisconsin Statute Chapter 125 would be approved and acceptable for hosting alcohol on that site, allow for the selling, and then for people to be able to consume and have the open intoxicants on that site.
Can you give us the most recent premise from where this kind of originated?
This originated because we had a brewery that had been able to obtain a secondary location permit from the state that would have allowed them to sell or dispense alcohol on the premise for the town square for a special event. That alcohol license was eventually denied because of the prohibition against open intoxicants. It would have ended up creating a situation where while the person was licensed to dispense alcohol on the premise, nobody would have been able to have an open intoxicant in that area. And given that conflicting situation, it seemed better to revise this. We did open it up to any approved Wisconsin Chapter 125 license or for the city distributing malt beverages pursuant to Wisconsin State Section 125.06 sub 6, because the legislature is in the process of revising Chapter 125, and it may expand some of those abilities to other breweries as well as wineries. So we didn't want to limit it to the one specific exception that the brew house was intending to utilize.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this ordinance? Megan?
Davis.
Aye.
Lampy. Board. Bartz. Smith.
Aye.
Schmid. Wetzel.
Aye.
Moldenhauer.
Aye.
Motion passed 8-0.
All right, let's go to resolutions. Our only resolution for this evening is Exhibit 9523. This is a resolution providing for the sale of approximately 13.80 note anticipation notes for public purposes. This is including paying the cost of constructing and equipping a new fire station. This is here from me and the Finance Committee.
I would so move.
Motion by Mr. Lampy, seconded by Mr. Bartz. Comments, questions?
I would like to address the council.
Sure.
On a past Finance Committee meeting, I did not vote negative to bring this to the council floor. But here's how I feel about it. I'm going to vote no on this, and I'll tell you why. I'd like to tell everybody why. First of all, we should have a study to look at the 2 stations instead of the 1, to see what we could do. I don't believe a study was ever done down here at the old station. And I think that should be done before we move forward on anything. Let's see what we got here. If it's usable, let's use it. And I agree with the satellite out there behind Ace Hardware. That's fine. But we should also determine what we can do with the old one. Is it usable for fire? What do we need to do? Do we need to improve the conditions for the firemen? On the walkthrough with the fire chief, he mentioned that he was having a hard time getting firemen. And that's why the one station was preferable over the two. And I'd like to know, why aren't we getting our firemen to come to Watertown? Is it because of the conditions, or is it maybe the pay? And I think this should all be laid on the table before we move on anything. This is all very pertinent to this question coming up. And if you can't get enough staff, why or why not? That's the big one. A study should be done of the existing fire station at this time. I know the police would like to have use for that building also, and maybe there's a possibility the police and fire could even share part of that building. But let's not move forward before we know what we're doing. Let's get the full study, let's get all the facts on the table, and then move forward on this issue. And I think we have time for this. There's no need to rush this thing. I don't know what the big rush is. Why can't we take a month or two and get a study done here and do it right? We have a lot of money on the line, and the citizens of Watertown have a right to know what's going on. Let's lay all the cards on the table and get it out to the public.
Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to comment? Question, Mr. Lampy?
Bob, you want to go ahead?
I'll just, question, has a study been done?
Chief?
Not since I was here in 2014 or 15, I believe there's a study.
It was mentioned tonight about Baird. Ken Berg mentioned them. Very confident. I'm just wondering, so everybody knows, what does Ken Baird, what does Baird, what is their part in this? What do they do? Just so people know.
Come on up, sir. I think you can probably go right there if you'd like.
And what is their stake in this, if any?
So, thank you. I'm Brad Vigut with Baird. Baird's role in this is to really serve as underwriter for the city, and that's a role that Baird has been playing for a number of years with all of the city's capital financing. So in that capacity, Baird developed a financing plan that meets the goals that were established by the Finance Committee and the mayor, and presented that information to the committee, to the council, and ultimately, if this is approved, Baird would underwrite the debt, which means we would find investors for the debt and finalize the rates and the terms, and then the city would receive the funds for the project.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, yeah, I have some more.
Go for it.
The question's been asked to me and others as well. It's been mentioned tonight. Why was there no referendum?
Mr. Cheesebro? It was why was there
no
not a
referendum?
referendum?
The requirements for a referendum depend on what the funding is for and the amounts. At this point, we've reviewed the statutes. They don't require a referendum for the taking out of a loan for public improvements such as a fire station when it doesn't result in a substantial increase to the tax debt roll. This would not result in that increase. That would require a referendum to be created, and therefore no referendums mandated by law.
So we had a choice. Answer the question why we did not. That's what I'm wondering. We could have, we did not have to, but we chose not to. Just wondering why.
It wasn't a choice I single-handedly make, so you're looking at me for an answer.
No,
I
I
would
know,
encourage you to look around
I know.
around one another.
Oh.
I might
Ms.
be able to
Davis.
answer that. I don't think anyone brought a motion to this body to have a referendum. So nobody started it here, council members.
Others? I'm waiting to make sure he doesn't.
I have some more.
Yeah. You want to keep going?
Sure.
All right.
Sure. To get a new station, as Mr. Marone said, everyone knows we need something in the city. Everyone's concerned about safety. Heather, what other sites have been researched?
Sure. Chief?
I think there was about a total of 8 sites, 6 or 8 sites that were researched. Shopko parking, off the top of my head, the Shopko parking lot off of Church Street, behind here at the old, I think it's called the Breslow site. Was there one off of Katy Street?
Shopko, there's one over by Maranatha.
I'll try to pull them up.
I know, I'm trying to pull up the report too. Say that again?
Union Park wasn't there?
That was one near Maranatha, I think.
I think it was the one next to Blue and White Park in that T-ball diamond.
Yep.
Union. Yeah, I think there was a total of 8, actually, sites looked at for the new station.
Okay.
Who did that analysis that ended up?
Five
with this?
Bugles Design.
Five Bugles Design.
A fire consulting firm.
I know noise is a concern. That's gonna be anywhere we go. That would be, anywhere we go, people are gonna complain about the noise. Just curious, in layman's terms, if we take this out 20 years, what is it gonna cost a home, or every $100,000, what will it cost a taxpayer?
Mr. Stevens?
The calculations of Baird and the finance director have calculated that it's approximately $1 per $100,000 of property value
It's per month,
per year.
for 20 years?
No, it would be approximately 4 years, and then as equalized values continue to increase, then the cost on the levy would actually decrease after those first 4 years. That's contingent on an assumption of continued borrowing at $3 million into the future, which is anybody's guess at this point.
Brad?
Sure, and that's correct. I just want to add that that's the marginal cost. So that's the impact of debt falling off of the city's balance sheet that has already been issued, and this new debt replacing on an annual basis, it would be that 1 cent mill rate impact for the first 3 years, or 4 years, and then we would see a decline.
I'm going to just circle back, so I'm probably in a dizzying manner scrolling through these sites. So site 1 was 304 Hart Street. This is the old SPX site. Site 2 was 709 Lafayette. That's the one you all are alluding to at Union Park. Or Blue and White Park. I've never heard that, but.
That's what I know it as.
Site 3 was 727 Katy Street. This is actually the old recycling center. Site 4 was 828 West Division Street. This was the one near Maranatha Baptist University. Site 5 was South Montgomery Street. However, this is not the site, but this was a site to the south of the current Able Light thrift store. Site 6 was the Shopko site. And site 7 is the site we're at right now. And that was a site that was studied and added to after this report was issued, when the property became a bit more apparent to us.
Thank you.
Mr. Wetzel, you have?
I have one more
Sure.
statement, I guess, going off of Alder Moldenauer again. Why firemen are not in Watertown. Just anecdotally, we have a driver that comes into AdTech occasionally, and he is a assistant chief in another city, east of here, in not Oconomowoc. And he was telling me why they get officers from here to there. And I'd gladly tell anybody what that is if you want to ask me in private, but not a personnel issue. I think that's done.
Thank you, sir.
I also have a bunch to say, Bob, so I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's good.
I do want to acknowledge the concerns of Alderperson Moldenauer and former Alder people, Berg and Moran, and also Mr. Callis and some of the other folks that have been here. And there are a few areas I think that we're probably going to agree to disagree on, and that's basically whether or not the current fire station has run to end of life or not, and I certainly believe that it has, and that an entirely new facility is warranted, both to support the equipment that we have now, as opposed to a rebuild. And as some of us have sort of alluded here, because it's critical for the ongoing recruitment and training of a professional fire force, and frankly, to honor the commitment that our existing team has made to the city so far. I do want to acknowledge a few things with regard to transparency on finance. There is an extra study that I had requested our finance department do through Baird, because I do not believe that the $3 million level for the city is sustainable. So a calculation was done also at $4 million more. And essentially that has the effect of sustaining that, that sort of 255 mill rate piece. Instead of looking at that falling off at 5 years, that means that it falls off at 15 years. Still, I think that is a very small price for the community to pay for the guarantee of excellent EMS and fire services into the future. I'm obviously a big fan of this particular plan. I think that we do need a major new regional facility. I do want to acknowledge the idea of having a satellite facility. I'm not necessarily sure we'd be on the same page of that either, about a future satellite facility. But I think the first step here is to make sure that we've cemented the future of the fire station EMS with a major new facility located on a site where they can do all the training, store all the vehicles, and basically make sure that we're positioned for the future. I do also want to acknowledge some of the concerns Mr. Callis and a number of others have brought up with regard to traffic in that area and also throughout the city. So one of the things that we've done as a finance group, I don't know if we've done it necessarily at the council level yet, but at least bring within the 2024 planning technology that essentially allows the automatic switching on of the traffic lights or the clearing of intersections essentially to help alleviate a lot of those congestion pieces. There's a couple of us here who feel that that's sort of part and parcel with developing the fire station, and that is in part because of the concerns that Mr. Callis and a few other folks in the community have brought around potential bottlenecks near Pick and Save and near some of those other areas. We want to acknowledge that, and we want to basically make sure that we are deploying technology where we can to use that. One of the other things I want to also make sure is injected back in the discussion when we talk about the difficulties of traffic is the difficulty of the current fire station. We have, if someone said that we were basically going to dump traffic out on Jones Street and then dump it back out on Main Street and go through 6 lights and a whole bunch of stopped vehicles in either direction, that would sound very silly, I think, compared to other options that we have to access an artery and put equipment on that quickly. We also, I think, should acknowledge that there's going to be some major issues with Main Street, which we do use as an artery today, both because of the Main Street Bridge construction coming up, which will effectively impact what we can do with the vehicles in the current location, and then again with the major Main Street reconstruction, which will basically put us 2 years of not having that as an artery as well. So I want to make sure that we're not necessarily looking at the current station as a perfect distribution point and look at a number of these sites as, frankly, Five Bugles did in their study, looked at those different sites with access to arteries and the ability to basically get off onto the side streets quickly with that in mind. I think that's probably going to be about it.
Okay. Others?
Just another
Sure.
item. If we were to take a study on the old station, well, the existing station at this point, have a study done, what it would take to bring it up to compliance. Is the building worthy of doing it? And if it is, if it takes us 10, 15 years into the future, that would be a big price to pay, because at that point, we're probably going to have one further north and east anyway. But for right now, it would suffice as far as contributing to what we need, and then have the satellite over where you want to put it. Now, the Shopko would have been a much better site than where you want to put it right now, over right behind Ace, because that's a wide open area. Fire trucks are highly visible coming from that area compared to where they're going to be coming from now.
Others? Comments?
So I have a question for Mr. Moldenhauer. If we were to do a study, would you want that study done in this fiscal year?
Yes, as soon as possible.
So what items in the current budget would not be funded to pay for the study that would be done?
Why are we in such a hurry to do this? We've had this fire station for how long now? I know it's an inconvenience. It probably is not perfect. but we have something. We have a building to work with. Why do we just disregard that building and want to put a new building up over there and just, the police could use it, that's fine and dandy. But if our fire department could also use that along with the police, or in this part of town, time-wise to get out to the north side of town, that's a big item here. Cut down that time to get to where you want to be, because people's lives are on the line, people's buildings are burning, fire doesn't wait for anyone. We have to get there as soon as possible.
Others, Mr. Schmidt?
My first one is for the investment group. Just a technical question for you. You'd mentioned that it would be a bond-based funding system, correct?
Correct.
So those bonds would then be sold in the general market through the investment firm, whichever person wanted to invest. Those bond return times then, based on the terms and conditions, if approved, would vary based on which section of the timeline we're in is 20-year payback, correct? Potentially?
I'm not following your question.
So like if we take so if approved as is, and we take these bond markets out, you then sell them on the market to the investors to raise the capital through that way, and then fund the city with the capital it raised.
Right.
If at, say, 4 years, we are at a point fiscally that we've come to the point where we can pull back a significant portion of those bonds, is it set up so then at that point we could pull back, say, $2 million, for example? We could just buy back $2 million of those bonds at whatever the rate is, or is there a prefix rate for us to pay off early?
Yeah, so what you're talking about is a call feature. That's the city's option to prepay the debt. For the first 9 years, there would not be a call option, but after the 9th year, you could prepay all of the debt or a portion of the debt in $5,000 increments on any business day.
So it's effectively just, I want to make sure I'm clear, is that if passed as is through the bond call feature as you described, the first 9 years are locked. We have basically a fixed monthly payment or a fixed quarterly payment to manage the debt for the first 9 years. And at the end of the 9th year, we then have the option to call forward or prepay any of the remaining debt as we are able to early.
That's correct. And all of the entire 20 years would be fixed rate and locked payments. So the payments wouldn't change once the bonds are issued. After the 9th year, the city would have the option to prepay, to either refinance with other debt, or if you had cash on hand, you could prepay with cash. And to get a little more technical, the 9 years is really, we could put in an earlier call feature, but there's a cost to that. And that cost is a higher interest rate to the city. That 9 years is sort of a sweet spot right now in the market where there isn't really much of a cost to have that call feature at the 9th year. In other words, if I push that to year 10, the interest rate doesn't get much lower, maybe a basis point, 1/100th of a point, 2/100th of a point. So that's a dynamic of the market. So in different markets, earlier call features might be acceptable. Like where we were 2 years ago, when interest rates were lower, the market's expectation was that issuers weren't going to exercise the call option, so there was no price for that call option. It was very low cost. We're in a different interest rate environment now, so there is a cost.
So this is an effective way to almost hedge against future increases that we don't know what it's going to be in 10 years. It could be worse than it is now, or it could be better, but we're locking in so to prevent, if it does get worse,
Right.
then at least we're locked in a better place with what knowledge we do have based on market trends and history.
That's right, and that's why it's a call feature, so that means it's your option, as opposed to a put feature, which would mean it's the investor's option to decide what to do. The city controls whether or not you want to exercise that option, not the investors.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Second question is for Chief. And then maybe somebody else if I'm unaware in which directed you. We've determined that there's definitely debate and differencing of opinion on end of life of our current facility. And I'm not a structural engineer by any scope of the imagination. With that said, I'm assuming as part of this 5 Bugle study, is there an additional study that was done related to that into what it would take to fix the deficiencies that we know about in our building? Do we have something to point to saying, here is the end of life of our building based on the age and usage, and what it would cost to fix those deficiencies? I mean, I'm not saying that it's a justifiable ROI. I'm just saying, do we have a number to compare, apples to apples in regards to what it would cost to fix versus how much life would it actually buy us?
Yeah, I think I know where you're going with that, and I don't have like a number to give you off the top of my head or anything I've seen in a report. From the best of my knowledge and understanding is they started to go down that road and they got, just inside the door on it and kind of looked around and were kind of like, this is not even worth going any further to look at fixing up. It's past its useful life. We've got some new firemen that started last week. I don't have a bunk room to put one of them in. We're remodeling what used to be an upstairs office space to try to find then some room between the bathrooms downstairs, not having an elevator, the weight of the trucks on the floor. I think it was very, very quickly into looking at, hey, what can we do to remodel here, that it was decided, don't even waste money to study it.
I pulled up the Five Bugles kind of conclusion summary from the study that I believe answers your question. The chief wasn't here when we completed this study, but this is one that's on the website that everyone keeps referencing. So if anyone's looking for a particular page, let me know. I'll do my best to pull the page up.
What's the date of the study?
You go ahead. I'll look.
So the reason I asked that is, obviously the people who investigated it at the time and did the study determined that it was not worth fixing. So that's good for them, and it's good for people who are on the inside and familiar with the project more intimately. But for those people who only get the outside knowledge, not having a hard number to go, here's the age of the building, here's the projected end of life realistically from a safety standpoint, and here is at this point in time a snapshot of what it would have cost in that dollars to buy us another 5, 10, or even 2 or 3 years of useful life, so we'd have something on paper to go, yeah, we did study it, we looked at it, we spent the money to have it appraised, and now it's showing, whatever this dollar figure is to bring it and buy us an extra couple years, and that would have been just a Band-Aid fix. But without having that, it's harder to go back to the constituency and say, we did all our due diligence. But I do understand, Chief, in regards to when they came in and looked and be like, yes, we could spend money to tell you that it's broken and unfixable, and I see why the decision was made not to at that point, but now we're dealing with the unforeseen consequence of those who weren't part of that decision having to answer questions that we don't have answers to.
Hopefully no one needs that, because now I lost my page. Mr. Smith.
I just have one quick question. I want to make sure that my reading of the detailed analysis for the fire station financing is accurate. But in nominal dollars, if the anticipated borrowing, the $13,080,000, is approved over 20 years, and there's nothing done that alters what is the current projection, the total repayment would be just under 20 million, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and so the interest cost that we would be incurring over the 20-year period is this $6.7 million?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to, I'm trying to think of the best ways to keep this short, and I'm really going to do my best. I am not going to support this resolution, and the reason falls into two categories. One is the concept of what we're doing and the implications of that concept. The second reason is the cost. There was a reference earlier to a study that was done back in the previous decade. I think it was 2015 or something of that order. At that point in time, Vanderwall did do a study. There was only a focus upon a satellite station. And what was being studied was nothing that would have given us any kind of comparative insight to what the plan is now. That study was primarily to evaluate alternate locations for a satellite station. And up to the point in time when I got off the council after a 6-year block, that was the complete approach for enhancing our public safety and our approach to dealing with the physical location of the station and how we were going to deal with that. When I got back on the council a year ago, April, I was very surprised to see that the only topic of conversation was the new station. I was concerned because I didn't believe we really had a comparative basis for moving forward. There was a anecdotal presentation of the reasons why a new standalone station would be the way to go. So I went to the Finance Committee meetings and I suggested that there was another alternative, which was a satellite station approach, and that I thought we should study it for the purpose of giving us a comparative basis for two important reasons. One is the cost. And it may well have turned out, had we done the study, that it would have been not a competitive alternative. A satellite station, fixing the current facility, the personnel costs, factoring everything in to the point where we actually had a comparative basis to the single standalone fire station. But the other thing that is of great concern to me, and that's why I believe this concept standing out there right now as the only alternative, is short-sighted and is not giving us the ability to make the kind of informed choice that might even end up with that being the determined answer. But what is my greatest concern is that with a single standalone station, wherever it is, we do not reach 100% response time within the 8-minute goal. From the current site, as things exist right now, we have a 90% rate. We can reach 90% of the properties in the city within that 8-minute period of time. And what is apparently a satisfactory approach in accepting a single new standalone fire station is that we increase our response capability to 94%. That's 6% of the city outside of 8%. That is the one thing that almost assuredly would be better if we had two locations. And it is why we have numerous communities, some quite close to us, that are about our size and have two stations. I mentioned at our last meeting my concern about when the move occurs from the central downtown area to the former Bethesda property, we expose portions of our city. The aggregate improves from 90% to 94%. But that is cold comfort to those who find the response time to their neighborhood is dramatically worse. The chief at the meeting last occasion told the number of responses to the country club lane subdivision. And there were 14 or 15 last year, and the average was somewhere over 6 minutes from the current station. Now, we're told that the anticipated response time from the new location is at least 8 minutes. You look at the map that's color-coded, it is the only area in the entire city that is bright red. There are some other shades of red on the east side. But everybody in the entire Country Club Lane subdivision are somewhere over 8 minutes from the new facility. And that is what I see as the potential greatest advantage of the satellite station, is we would have much greater response time. And until we have some meaningful study which would give us a basis of making an objective comparison, we are moving forward quickly with a concept that we hope will be the best for the city's future. But we don't know that. And from the perspective of the cost, we're talking about a huge investment that we need to get right. We're talking about an extraordinary cost to our taxpayers. Now, I take my hat off to Baird, and if I wanted a case made which would make a bonding attractive, I would hire them in a heartbeat, because basically what he has done is he has studied the approach that will have the least impact upon the taxpayers at any given point in time. And he's leveled out using the times when other debt would phase out and when increased percentage of this debt will be picked up, and et cetera, and it looks reasonably good. But whenever you borrow $13 million, it has long-term implications. And it's not just the borrowing of the principal. It is the necessity to repay over a longer period of time. A 20-year repayment on a $13 million borrowing brings us up to a total payback of almost $20 million. Now, if there's one thing that tells me is, when you're making a decision of that magnitude, and there isn't anybody that I know of that would argue that we don't need substantial improvements in areas of public safety in our community, and especially in issues of fire and EMS services. But what we do need to do, and in order to be able to look the taxpayer in the eye and say, yes, this is a big ticket item, but we have compared every reasonable alternative, and we know for certain that this is the best approach. I can't say that. I don't have a comparative study that we can use to compare to what is the program that we are looking to provide the funding for through this bonding resolution. So the cost is extraordinary. The repayment is great. We need to be certain. I am not, and I am very concerned about response times to parts of our community. When talking in terms of minutes, it's pretty easy to just let those numbers roll off your tongue. But 2 minutes is the difference between life and death. And any greater degree of delay, I mean, to me, it is something that we just absolutely have to get right. And I wished we had done the comparative study, that we had put it into the finance budget, that we could be sitting here tonight saying that we are certain, based upon objective comparison, that this is the best approach. I can't say that. And because of that, I'm going to vote against this resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Anyone else? Mr. Lampe?
I did just want to acknowledge that there is some information out there from the previous looks at the satellite stations off to the southwest. In some of the research here, there was the proposal that came through in 2004, where Belinsky, I believe, had made the offer basically to build a station and donate it to the city. Obviously, that one went by the wayside 20 years ago. The second one was, as you said, there was the report that came in. I see it here, an article in June 16th, 2015, where this was where the idea of a satellite station was presented to the Finance Committee, which essentially had passed on that as well. Both of those stations, as I mentioned, out in the Belinsky Homes area, and then the second station. Let's see if I have where it was proposed here. 127 Dayton Street was the location that was looked at. That the siting of both of those stations is significant because they're essentially acknowledging one of the assumptions I don't think we've come around to tonight, which is that we're going to be doing a very large chunk of development in the southwest of the city. If you look at what's on tap between the Belinsky Homes area and then potentially what we're looking at doing in collaboration with the collective that's out County A, that's potentially adding about another 1,000 homes. If that were all to come to fruition, and then we also have another 90-acre commercial parcel that's extending way out to the west, and all of those developments are a nod that essentially we think development is going to follow some of that 4-lane highway that we have out there at 26 and essentially pull the city population, development, and everything else a bit to the south. And so I think all of those initiatives going back to 2004 and then the next one in 2015, and this one too, frankly, all have a bent to expecting the development to be out there. And as we look at coverage maps to make sure that those stay within the high 90% as those continue to develop over the years. The other thing is we did pull some numbers, and if you look at the monthly fire department reports, that area that you're talking about is isolated as Zone 4. And so there's statistics that I think that the chief found pretty easy to pull on those because those would be, what do we get for Zone 4 in that particular area? But if you go back to the past couple of council notes, there are 0 calls in that area in the last 4 months. It's not a high traffic area. That said, again, one of the things that I wanted to make sure that we were doing as a finance council is make sure that we are optimizing use of our roads for fire engines, and that's part of the reason why we're looking at technology, that there's lights that go up that direction. Make sure that those things are always green when we have fire or EMS services head in that direction, and maximize the use of especially Church Street as an artery for that.
Others? Mr. Schmidt?
Just a comment. I appreciate the comments from my fellow members on the board, and I appreciate the comments from the public because that does bring some issues to light. But in all transparency, since we've started the whole concept of a fire station, I've received not one call or email about it. And it's in my district. It's in my district now. It will be in my district when it moves. And be even closer to my house and even louder. And the only complaint I get regularly is noise related. And I've yet to hear one complaint about noise relating to the fire station. The train, it's a train. I get it. Generally, it's concert related. So I have not had a single question asked of me in person, via email or via phone, related to the funding or why aren't we doing a second station or any of those things. So I don't know if people don't think I'm approachable, but to people who do ask me questions, I make time and answer their calls, even at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And some of them aren't very pleasant, but I'll take the call. And so, on that, I haven't heard anything, and I appreciate the investment company going into the great detail of showing us the dollar cost averaging, showing us the locked interest rate, showing that we do have a set period of time to pay it off, that we can't prepay before that point, but then after that point, we can prepay. And because it is going to the public bond market, anyone has the right through an investment agency to buy those bonds. Just like the federal government does the same thing when it does bonds, which is why bonds are doing so well, because of the interest rate. So I get that aspect, and the response time is going to have a lot of variables and unintended consequences that none of us can predict, no matter how many studies we do, because we don't know what the population increase or decrease is going to be in the next 5 years. We have an idea based on our capital plan for the next 5 or 10 years, what we would like to see, but we can look at the historical trends in Wisconsin with birth rates, with the population incoming or leaving the state, and those numbers affecting those things in regards to technology, people's driving habits changing. So there's a lot of variables we don't have. The light thing, we did talk about improving response times, because that's one thing I was surprised to learn we didn't have. So having that technology to control the lights, whether either digital or analog or some kind of a hybrid system, will improve response times. And I think having that will help. I do wish we had that study showing a hard number of an end of life from an actual company. That would resolve a lot of these issues that people might have, showing, well, where's that study? Even though they walked and started it, but never put anything in paper, that does put us behind the power curve, or behind the 8 ball, so to speak, to not have anything to show to our constituency. Even though if you walk in and look at it from a structural engineer standpoint, the end of life is probably coming very near based on the weight and equipment that we have. So could we have done better? Probably, but hindsight's 20/20 in most cases. Is this a good product, or as good as we could get with what we have and what we worked with? I've seen a lot worse. I mean, but as Alderman Lampe pointed out, it's a decent product. And no one is arguing Baird's work on this. How it got here, again, it is what it is at this point. We can't go back and we can't change time. We can't say, well, why didn't we do referendum when apparently there's no record of anybody proposing it. And I'm sure if enough of us would have got complaints from our constituency, one of us would have proposed it, because that's who we work for, is our constituency. I didn't receive anything. So that tells me my constituency, for the most part, either doesn't care or is okay with it. Now, some of them might not be, but they never contact me. So then I can't speak for that half, because I don't know. So as it stands, pending any unforeseen consequences, I'm okay with it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Lampe?
I just want to acknowledge, I mean, there were a number of letters to the editor. We'd have had people who come to address the council with some of these opinions. I do want it to be acknowledged that we are reading those. We are listening to the comments that do come in. And I do want to make sure that the points that you're raising are at least addressed, so where we have differences of opinion or where we do not.
Others? Mr. Schmidt?
One correction, I was corrected. It is right outside of my district line by across the street because of the redistricting. Alderman Wetzel pointed out to me.
Thank you. Anyone else on this one?
Madam Mayor.
Where were Mr. Wetzel?
Wetzel.
I had to.
This is one I've gone back and forth on in my mind since we've been talking about it. Which way to go? And this may sound trivial or trite, but today I went to my financial guru, I guess. Nobody in this council, nobody, not the mayor, didn't talk to you about it. The person I trust implicitly with, I would say, here's my checkbook, control it for me. I know his business acumen from his business life up to now has been impeccable. And has never made a knee-jerk decision on finances. Always looks at the whole picture, knows what's going on in every aspect. And you looked at what Baird proposed and is totally 100% for it, behind it. And to me, that said a lot. And that just kind of pushed me over the edge to support it.
Thank you. Others? Mr. Lampe?
This is more of a question. If we basically have an up or down vote on this particular resolution, so what would happen if we did not pass it?
Well, go Go ahead, Brad, if you feel like you have a good answer. I mean, I feel like I had a couple, but I was waiting for someone else to jump up. Go ahead.
No, well, this is a preliminary resolution, and it's really to provide direction for us to continue to proceed developing the financing package based on the current cost estimate of the fire station.
And practically, we have a contract out for construction management services that need to be brought in at this juncture. We would not proceed with that. Which, do you want to connect those dots? If the construction manager was supposed to come in at this juncture during the design.
We're about the 30% of our design phase, and it's time for us to bring on the construction manager, start getting these costs in line, and start to look at ways to probably bring costs down as we start going through, which type of building materials to use, which type of finishes to pick, where to do HVAC runs and things like that. So we need those numbers to come together to get our $13 million, hopefully down a little bit more. So this is where the pie starts to get made, and we have to get it in the oven pretty soon to let it bake.
Yes?
I guess just for clarification, and this is where I think, I don't know if everybody took a look at the numbers that went through the finance packet back on the 10th or whatnot that breaks this down, but essentially, and stop me if I'm wrong on any of this,
Stephen, I'll
please.
switch. If you want to pull up the finance packet, I'll switch back to you.
But basically, the project cost was 12.5, and then basically through the financing that we chose, that brings it up to the 13. Yeah, July 10th.
It's right there.
Sorry about that. Sorry, Mr. Lampy.
And I think actually I wanted to go one more because it talks about, this is an eye chart, but basically, I'm trying to find, there it is. It's very small, but it says above that center area where it bumps out a little bit above, that actually says Project Fund 12.5. So that's basically what I understand is how much money we have to spend. The rest is financing costs brought within the first year. So within that 12.5, I believe that we allocated about $400,000 for the construction manager, give or take. And so basically we have about $12.1 million to build an entire structure on an undeveloped piece of property. So we still have work to do, I think, to get what we want to build in the structure under that 12.1, if you will. But I want to be careful with the number 13 because that's not all bricks and mortar and everything else.
Anything you'd add or clarify to that, Brad? Okay. Others? Comments, questions, thoughts? Mr. Moldenhauer?
Okay, looking at that manager, I've been thinking about that. This is a design-built building, and it is not a design-built building? Not at all, okay. My mistake. If it was, we wouldn't have to worry about that. So this gentleman is gonna, or lady, whoever, is going to go through all the building materials and everything with the council as it progresses.
They would go through it with the design committee, but if we've done this before, we did it with the ambulance. If there's interest from a particular alderperson, we can bring them into those meetings. I just can't bring everyone and have a quorum. So I know you've expressed interest in materials, so I mean, yeah, I see no reason why we can't include you in those if you'd like to be included in them. We did it with the ambulance. I don't know if anyone remembers that. When we built the ambulance, alderperson sat on that.
And also on this particular thing, we're gonna be coming through the geothermal and the solar and all that. That's not part of this.
That was voted down by the finance committee.
Down the geothermal?
Both of them were.
Okay.
Is it correct,
Very
finance
good.
members? Okay.
Yeah.
Others? Comments, questions?
What's the construction management contract? What are you asking for?
The RFP? Yeah, go ahead, Chief.
From the research, the RFP would be about 3 to 5% of the total cost of the build.
Is the construction manager giving you a guaranteed maximum price, or are they simply going to be babysitting the architect and the contractor?
I'll go to Mark.
Who's actually going to build the building, Mark?
Yes, we wrote in the RFP a guaranteed maximum.
At what point? Then 100%,
at the end of the design.
so at 100%?
Yes.
Construction documents?
Yep.
Other questions, comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve Exhibit 9523. This is for the sale of the anticipation notes. We did say at Finance, this is like, we will formally bring this dollar value back when we have an actual dollar value to plug into these calculations. But this is the one that's really pushing us past the starting line so that we can sign a contract and get construction management services going. So I just want to make sure everyone is comfortable and factually informed about what they're voting on with Exhibit 9523. And I also stalled for one last minute, because there's always one. Go for it, sir.
The construction manager contract, that cannot be solicited to fill until after we do this, correct?
It's on the street, but I would never have, we wouldn't have
We haven't-
awarded anything. No,
Okay.
it's open right now. After Finance approved it last week. Go ahead, Chief.
After the finance approved it, we put it out to bid on the city's website, or not to bid, but, well, yeah, to start soliciting the proposals back, to start to look at them, but we won't sign anything without
There's a,
this happening.
how long,
So,
do you recall, either of you, how long the period is? Yeah.
August 3rd, they have to have them returned by, and then we'll spend a week reviewing them, and mid-August, we're looking to interview top candidates, and end of August, September, have them on board.
Anything you want to add to that?
Who are the decision makers on that? Definitively.
I don't know if we've picked those. Have we?
So there's going to be a group of myself, Mark Stevens from Finance, city engineer will be invited. Really, we could put together, it'll be a committee of like 4 or 5 people that'll interview the.
Who was the committee that selected SEH?
There's some older people on the committee, city engineers, and then people from the fire department's team that's been working on this since 2021.
So I think the factual answer is, we think, we have an idea who will be on it, but we haven't selected who those people are. It's still open. So if you have ideas or comments, please just reach out. We're happy to field those. We've had older people do selections before. I'd want to make sure the city attorney's fine with that, but yeah. So if you have ideas, let us know. Others, anything, any last comments, questions, concerns? Okay. Okay, so again, we have a motion and a second to approve Exhibit 9523. Megan, will you please take the roll?
Lampy? Board?
Yes.
Bartz?
Aye.
Smith?
No.
Schmid?
Yes.
Wetzel?
Aye.
Moldenhauer? Davis? Motion passed 6-2.
Very good. We do have another opportunity from comments from citizens present. If anyone would like to comment, you can certainly come to the microphone. Mr. Berg.
Well, I'll just tell you that I'm disappointed in this council on your decision-making. I think it was flawed, and you'll probably be proven wrong within time, but we'll wait for that to happen. I'm bothered by, you talk about this building being 1964. Big deal. 35 years and 23 is, that's not a big number as far as any. This is a brick building. It's been improved. We put money into this in 2003 when we did the referendum, and we added on to that fire station. It said previously that there'd been no improvements made to this building, to that fire station since 64. That's a lie. It's wrong. We also solidified that floor for $400,000. We did things to make that fire station better and improved and ready for operation. I'm all for making it better and doing things. The satellite concept will be proven right, and it'll take time, but it will be proven right, and you'll then have another cost unless you do something to that existing building, that existing fire station, and use it for something related to that fire station. Primary is what I should be making a case for on where you're at now. Make it the primary and make the other site a satellite type station. That's what you should be doing, because you've heard all the examples from other communities like Watertown, similar in size, where they have a satellite concept to respond to EMS runs in a timely fashion so they get 100% safety and success as far as getting there on time. You heard that about the townships. All this area we have around Watertown, there's like 80 square miles of area that if you look at, we have to respond to as far as fire protection. And we are going to rely on that one site, and that's flawed. You need to have two because other communities like us have done that for that reason. That's why the satellite does make sense, and it should have been a part of your logic and thinking for tonight. But you're too far along, and you won't want to change your thinking because it's too much work to do it. But you have a way to do it, and you've chosen to take the easy route, which is to move forward. And you'll be looking at this issue because the things that we brought up tonight are still going to be there later on when it gets put in place, if it does. I'm hoping and praying that somebody on this council wakes up to some of the realities that were brought up by people like Alderman Smith and Moldenhauer and other people like myself and others who have been in government. Bill Marone's been in government like me. He was eight years, I think. So we are here for the right reasons. We're trying to help this town. You might think we're negative. We're not. We're constructively trying to give you advice that's meant to help you make better decisions. And you can move forward, but I'm just bothered by the fact that you have ignored other comparables like us. And I'm bothered by the fact that the satellite gives you the 100% success rate on getting to your destination within 8 minutes, and why you can address all the townships in a timely manner as far as getting there for a fire protection type reason. I don't understand why you look at this location and you got Marquardt Manor is a high area of response, and that is a good distance away from this proposed site. So it's going to put these types of examples more in play, and it's going to be a discussion topic going forward. But you could fix it now if you could just relook at this topic and slow it down and do it in a different way. And you were given good comments by different people. I know you're trying to fix this problem, but I'm bothered by this building. 64 is an old building. It's all no good. That's wrong. We've done money and put money into it to make it better, and we could keep doing it if we were open to that idea. The satellite concept is what you should have been staying on board with, and you've got the wrong information. Even this thing on Evers, I'm bothered by the fact that there's $700,000 coming to Watertown, and we're going to end up, but we could earmark a portion of those dollars, and we could have them allocated for staffing for that satellite concept to be put in place. And then you wouldn't be even impacting on property tax dollars because they would be coming from that $700,000 every year going forward because of the legislature and Evers giving money to us because we have not been getting revenue sharing for a long time in Watertown. And we're finally going to get it. Thank you, Jesus. But in the end, we're not earmarking it like we could. And the chief, when he gave his letter, he said, one of the reasons why I don't want the satellite is because it's going to have staffing costs that we don't want to pay for it in our budget. And we don't want that impact. We want to stay away from that. You got the solution right now because of this Evers and because of the legislature. Why are you ignoring that as a solution to implement this satellite concept? It bothers me. 94% is a number. It's theoretical because they haven't proven it yet. And once you get it in place, we'll find out how close that 94% is to real. But right now, it's just talk. You got 90% because you've proven it here over time that is the response on getting two places in town within 8 minutes, which is, it's a pretty decent number, but you could supplement that with a satellite and give it 100% compliance all the time, every time, and fix the problem and have two stations for the future and fix our problem long term instead of doing what you're doing today, which is to put a nice big building up and pay the $13 million, which will be $20 million later on, and then you're just going to talk about this issue later on about a concept of satellite because you're going to need it. Because every other town and city like us has used it to make their response for fire and for EMS better for safety reasons. So I'm sorry. I keep thinking that people can be open to reason, and you've got your reason, but I'm disappointed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berg. Anyone else that would like to comment? All right. Seeing none, I would ask for a motion to adjourn. Mr. Schmid, seconded by Ms. Davis. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned.